Hey everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So I'm going to preface this video. Despite actually already looking at the majority of the questions and getting a TLDR of what each of them are, I want to say this at the beginning of this video before next week, because I know people are going to have questions next week, and I don't know if what you're going to be asking will be answerable by then. So, I did recently attend the Final Fantasy XIV media tour in San Francisco, which means I got hands-on with Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood, the job changes, the class changes, pretty much everything that we're waiting to hear about from the live letter coming up soon. I will not be sharing any of those details, my thoughts on the changes, because we probably won't learn everything there is to learn from the live letter, until a future date. Basically, I'm in the process of getting all of my, as I've been saying, ducks in a row so that I have a ton of content to present to you guys regarding the changes that I got to experience. So, please be patient, please look forward to it, and if you ask a question about it next week in Mondays with Mrhappy, I will not answer it. As soon as you see me post videos regarding what I did in the media tour, then you can start asking the questions, alright? So, just, please look forward to it. Hi. But on that note, I'm going to get into the questions. I wanted to make sure there were no questions like that in the current Mondays with Mrhappy video, so let's get started. Alrighty then, so first question of this week. Hey, there it is. Hi, Haps. Have another. Yeah, sorry about that. I totally forgot to put the more recent thread in last week's video until like Thursday or Friday or something like that. I'm actually surprised we have as many questions as we do. So looks like it's a question roulette time. So let's see. Eorzea, Ishgard, Liberator, Healing, and while playing Final Fantasy XII, I realized. I'm going to go with Healing. Alright, do you think that AoE heal shield should be raid-wide? No, because then at that point, you don't need any more than like 4 healers to a raid group. And that's kind of weird, like, unless you're going to do 3 healers, because having 6 healers and having heals be raid-wide, I could solo heal 24 people, practically, if that was the case. So, then there's redundancy in abilities, and you really don't need everyone to be healing. Like, all the healers could practically be DPSing except for one, and you'd see that practice a lot more. So no, I don't think that they should be raid-wide. I think maybe Stone Skin 2 we could excuse, but that would require some infrastructure changes, and I don't think it's worth it. That was an easy first question. Alright, so let's see. Hey there, Mrhappy. Hope you're enjoying your daily Hap coffee. I have like a tiny bit left in here, like just a little bit at the bottom there. But otherwise, yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of it. The question has to do with how 14 handles latency. With the server move, it's a pretty hot topic. TLDR, the question is, do you think 14's ability resolution should rely more on the client for all off global cooldowns, like how Mudras were changed? So I don't want to speak on this topic like I know it definitively. But I know that after the Mudra changes, it was definitely much more satisfactory. You still run into Mudras refunding, but the delay between individual Mudras is lower. Before, when the delay between Mudras was higher, I didn't have a trade-off pretty much depending on that. You may see if your latency is very high, you may see more refunding if everything's done client-side, because if it can't travel to the actual server, there's a hiccup. That's when you get screw-ups like that. So it's a tough trade-off, but I think that when it works, it definitely, what you're saying, feels better. So that's definitely, it's something to take into consideration. But right now, what's going on with the server move and all the drama, there is a thread that Square Enix has, and I think I've been kind of debating whether or not I want to make a video explaining to people what the server move means in the long run versus how it's affecting people right now after the change. We could say the whole, you know, fuck you for complaining about 100 latency when I've been playing with 250. We could do that whole thing, but instead I think it's better to actually cover what the actual server move has done. So basically what they've done is they've, for the most part, eliminated level 3 communications as one is the routes that the internet, your connection has to take in order to reach the server. I still think that California is a bit of a rough location, but the locations that were most popular or that we thought were most likely out in the Midwest still would have had to bounce through level 3 communications, which was the problem they were trying to overcome in the first place. So what's going on with this new location is now they have to communicate with all the ISPs to make sure that people's connections are properly bouncing from point to point to get there in the shortest amount of time. Of course, VPNs are still always going to have a slightly better connection, even if ISPs have somewhat optimized it. But right now, they're in the process of communicating with all the different ISPs to get those communications set in stone before Stormblood actually launches. So people who may have issues even on just the East Coast or in places like Puerto Rico or South America, in the next 2 or 3 weeks should see substantial improvements over where the servers were before. There are some people who are actually in optimal locations that are having worse bounces. I know South America in particular is sending their connection to Europe and then bouncing it to New York and then bouncing it to the new server locations. That's probably going to be resolved in the next several weeks. So definitely be on the lookout. And if you go to the Square Enix official forums, there's a thread where you can post your ping, your current ISPs, and a bunch of other information they're requesting. And I heavily request that you go to the forums and actually post, just give them exactly what they're asking for. No smart ass comments or anything like that. And it'll probably help get the issues resolved much sooner. I answered the question and then I just went on a complete tangent, but I feel like it was a pretty important one there. Hey, Happy, first time here, so I have a bonus sushi roll. Dude, just one? Otoro. Actually, I'll just take Otoro as sashimi, so way better. With the increasing number of beast tribes that I already know where this is going, they're undoubtedly going to be added throughout Stormblood. Do you think the daily limit of 12 is too small? Yeah. So the daily limit of 12 made sense even through Heavensward, because the only beast tribes that had more than 3 were the Ixal. So you could feasibly do dailies for 4 beast tribes per day. If you ranked up with a beast tribe, you could do up to 6 dailies with a beast tribe per day. But it was still just for that day until you went to the next one. So it was okay, but I feel like it looks like we're getting 2 more beast tribes, and who knows if they're planning on doing like Keeker and beast tribe quests or something further down the line. I do think that it would be smart to raise that to 15 or 18. 15 would probably be the place I'd imagine them hitting and being like, that's a sweet spot. But I do think we need more Beast Tribe daily slots in general. All right, next question. I don't know if you guys have noticed, I've tried to stop saying next question. I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said next question for all 25 questions. And I was like, oh God, kill me now. Hello, how often do you visit Southern California theme? Have you seen this pasty white face? Do you think this pasty white face has spent a day at SeaWorld, Disneyland, or Universal Studios? To be honest, I don't really care about theme parks. I liked them when I was younger, but except for roller coasters, because I can't do that. Even in my like mid-20s now, I still can't do roller coasters. But I don't really do theme parks. They're just not interesting. I remember one time I went to a Six Flags. I was like, this shit sucks. I'll go to a water park. I fucking love water parks. But a theme park? Nah, I'll just go to the DDR machine in the arcade and we'll call it a day. Don't you love it when you get a question that just makes you go like, man, I have no life. Anyway, fairly new viewer here. Hello. A couple weeks ago, I quit playing WoW as it didn't suit my personal taste for raiding. Uh-oh. I don't even need to read the rest of the question to see where this is going. After switching to 14, I'm having a lot of fun and enjoying the game overall. Here's the thing, though. Like I said, I knew where this was going. I used to semi-hardcore and hardcore raid in WoW. It was top 10 and then top 200, 300 when I went a little bit more casual. When education work didn't prevent me from raiding. Quit raiding at that level, went casual about a year ago. 14 has ignited my hunger for boss kills and progression. That happens in a new environment. Do you think the skill set from WoW raiding is transferable? So I think the mentality is transferable. You know, you're willing to sort of push yourself to do things that aren't really considered standard for your job or for your class in order to push extra DPS or in order to overcome certain mechanics. It's the mentality that transfers really. But the way that WoW plays versus the way Final Fantasy XIV plays, despite being both tab target MMOs, is very, very different. The time to get out of AoEs, the way that your rotation is affected by doing boss mechanics, is all very different in Final Fantasy XIV. But I think that groups in Final Fantasy XIV, as long as you can prove that your skills on the job have improved enough to the point where you're very comfortable in what you're playing in Final Fantasy XIV, the value of being a world progression raider in World of Warcraft should be somewhat transferable. As much as people like to joke about the WoW rating tier, Mythic has put out some pretty decent bosses, despite the fact that the world first, like the very first, killed I think Nighthold was in like, even shorter of a time than Alexander the Creator, if not just longer. I know it was right around the same time it took to defeat the creator. So, I mean, with that in mind, though, with that looking like the raid difficulty, going into Omega Savage's normal tier, and then we have the Super Savage thing in 4.1, whatever that's going to be, I think that it should be even more transferable because you're looking at probably about the same difficulty. You're also looking at smaller groups, so you don't have to worry as much about scheduling and stuff like that. I think with the mentality, you could definitely get up to that point. You could probably prove yourself in things like the primals and doing pug raids and whatnot in the party finder, and then you should very easily be able to work your way into a real raid group. That was a good one. I like these. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hope you're having a great week thus far. Oh, yeah. I'm a first-time poster, so I have some Subway chocolate chip cookies. What a weird... You guys come up with some of the weirdest first-time bonuses, you know that? Apologies if you've answered this before. It's a great way to proceed the question. Do you ever miss a completely story-driven raid experience like the Binding Coil of Bahamut? Where there's one difficulty, your reward for the successful completion of the raid wasn't just gear, but a continuation of the story? I'm indifferent because so for me, that's a very difficult question. More so because I'm always completing the raid at a pretty quick pace regardless of it being story driven or not. Like I try to be like of the faster clears, I want to be within those clears regardless. So I don't really get the same satisfaction out of the story like that other people have. I get the satisfaction, but I don't need the raid's difficulty to gate that satisfaction for me. I just want to know the story regardless. So I'm going to clear it in a pretty reasonable amount of time. So it doesn't matter. It's going to take me about the same time to experience the story. I like well-designed fights. I always think about fights and the way they're designed and the way they could be improved and where things were either buggy or messed up. So for me, the experience for raiding is really the bosses, and I can always apply the Savage difficulty to the story in sort of my own headcanon if it was really something that I wanted to feel or go through. But I don't have to. I feel like I get both of the experiences to an adequate amount, and so it's really indifferent to me. I feel like since I started, I locked the thread, but I just looked at the number of replies, and I feel like the number of replies went up after I locked the thread. So I guess we have a few extra questions here at the end. Hey Haps, continuing with new player questions because I know you love them. My new 14 friends brought this to my attention that side dungeons are confusing to unlock. Yeah, I didn't even need to read the rest of the question. I understand that. There's the recommended quest tab, but it's just not satisfactory enough, man. That's why I've been telling people, if you see plus sign quests, and I do this just to signify it, to pantomime it, do them. I mean, a lot of them unlock dungeons, and it comes down to kind of just figuring out the patterns and looking for quests and really looking at that recommended quest tab. But I will say, yes, you're 100% right. You're looking at things like the 50 and 60 roulette and all the dungeons from the previous patches. Without asking people, you're probably going to miss some of those. So I think that they could definitely improve said means of unlocking those older quests. But how they would do it, I'm not on the design team, so it's hard for me to really decide. They could just give them all to you, but that kind of destroys the stories that those dungeons are trying to create. But at the same time, who cares? If you want that story, other than Tamtera, all right. So if I scroll down, people will see the remaining part of this question. It's a different question. I'm going to pretend that one doesn't exist, and I'm going to move on to the next one. Okay, we got a lot of text here. Greetings, Mr. The Happy. No, don't do the Tama thing. And I said the. Damn it. This is my first time asking you something. So in honor of this, I have a bonus of unlimited free rides using the Chocogo service. Oh, God, that April Fool's joke. Okay, fine. Since that didn't pan out, the real bonus will be me subbing to your Twitch channel when I get around to it. Yay! Yay! Thank you. A little bit of context. Me and my girlfriend have played 14, hi from Shiva, since around a realm were born. We enjoyed the ride so far and looking forward to the future. My girlfriend is now under the impression the game is being made for dummies. I wonder where you would get that impression. For example, older gear being given to new players, clearing the main story quest, and being lifted to an item level without fighting to get there. And the possibility this trend will continue in some form in a Stormblood. Obviously, we've butted heads on the topic. My take is while these things are presented to us, they aren't forced on us as players. I prefer the accessibility being given to new players and even those who don't have the time to play on a consistent basis. Am I too hoping for an intermediate or advanced hall? I want an intermediate at the very least. For the love of God. Can we get an intermediate haul? I would love to get an intermediate haul. Advanced haul might go a little too far because that might literally have to be you telling people their rotation. and that's kind of weird for the game to put, hey, this is exactly what you should do in this order in the game. It's a little weird, but something like that at least helps you cover the basics of your job versus the basis of your role. Beginner Hall teaches you your role. Intermediate Hall, I'd like it to teach you aspects of your job that you should really have picked up by that point. But I'm hoping for it at the very least, so I feel like you can hope for it too. You know, so has 14 become easier and more accessible to newer players? So we can say easier, we can say more accessible, and then we can also take a look at how many main story quests a new player has to get through. Listen, if we're not going to cut down the amount of main story quests or hand someone a story jump potion, at least the gear has to be easier to get for all the newer players, you know what I'm saying? Because they have hundreds of quests to go through before they can get to the most recent stuff. So, yeah, it's become easier maybe because, you know, they've been adjusting the difficulty. It's gone down since Gordius, and that's really the pinnacle of difficulty. Although I think the 4-man dungeon difficulty has actually gone up on a very small curve. But in terms of everything else, like more accessible, listen, while there's all those story quests there, I will not say more accessible. All right, then. That was a long answer. Hello, Senor Feliz. Not my first question, but you can have some South American candy. This time, Bocadillo Valleño. Guava fruit. You could have just said guava fruit candy instead of making me look like a fool. Quick question. I pre-ordered Stormblood and activated the early access code on the Mog Station, but I have not yet been charged. You're not going to get charged till it ships. If you did it digitally, you'll be charged around the 16th. If you did it physically, you'll probably be charged closer to the 14th or the 15th because they'll probably ship a few days earlier. Yeah, and then you'll be good. Oh, we got a few short ones back to back now. Greetings and salutations. Quick and simple question. What do you think of the idea of having market boards become across a data center? So I think that creates a very odd dynamic where all the data centers kind of have their own economies, and you're going to end up in a situation where there's likely way more supply than demand, and the prices of everything tanks. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks when you're on, like, the low-pop servers and the demand outweighs the supply, and then on the high-pop servers you have supply, but the demand never really outweighs the supply on the high pop servers. It kind of always falls even as long as an item has some sort of value. So the problem is you're basically just, you're not really evening it out in a sense. Like there's still more supply being added and there's more demand being added. It would make more sense if the other servers had low supply and or had high supply and low demand, and some servers have low supply, high demand, and then it evens out. But I don't feel that's really how it actually ends up panning out. I think it causes a lot more problems for the market than it actually solves. All right, next one. That's one. Hi, Mr. Happy. First time asker, so have a bonus of a free permanent retainer with maxed out levels. Retainers. Anyway, how long do you think the market will be stimulated after Stormblood hits? I mean, Heavensward's market was pretty stimulated all throughout. There were always new markets opening up, stuff that dropped from the Aquapolis, stuff that dropped from Palace of the Dead. Palace of the Dead also destroyed some markets in the process, however. I always found that Desynthesis was a nice stable market the entire way through and had some very high peaks throughout things such as like the Moogle quests becoming available or Void Arc gear becoming desynthesizable. And I felt like all throughout it was pretty stimulated. Every 2 patches you get a ton of new raid level recipes. On the odd numbered patches you're getting new glamour style recipes, and there's always new items that are being introduced into the game that are opening up new markets, even if just for a short time until people kind of over farm them. So I feel like it'll probably be very similar to Heavensward, where, you know, there's shit tons of items that everyone's trying to rush to get, and then it kind of evens out and you have some more valuable and some less valuable, and then, you know, you have, you know, dips and spikes and dips and spikes throughout the rest of the expansion. All right, let's see. Hey there, Mr. Happy. First time asking, so have a nice healthy salad for your first time bonus. You said you wanted to start eating healthy. I got more of those freshly meals. It was really nice. Last night we went out and I got a steak. I mean, a steak on its own is not unhealthy, but when everything else is mixed in there, it gets, you know, well, you know. And then I had some alcoholic beverages. You know, gotta let loose a little bit once in a while. My question is, I've been playing 14 for several years now. Started playing with my girlfriend. 2 girlfriend questions here. Well, actually, I don't know if it's a girlfriend question. Since release, me and her have broken up, and I haven't played as much as I want to, but I can't bring myself to play much since then. Any advice on how to get back into the game, as I love the game? Best mom. Best MMO. I know you meant to say MMO. I've ever played, but can't get that bleh feeling. Just move a different server. Literally, just go be a part of another community that she's not a part of. I mean, it's like, that's tough, but you eventually move on. That's just kind of life if that makes sense. You'll get another girlfriend, you know, you get other people are enter into your life, and you just kind of move past it. Quite a bit of text in this one as well. Hey, Mr. Happy, first time asker, receive a bonus of every primal red mage and samurai weapon so you don't have to farm them later. I'm not going to farm them ever, but thank you. This is a question and an explanation. First the question, then the explanation. Why don't you ever think they'll make 24-man endgame? I started MMOs young with my father. You could just stop right there. We started in EverQuest. Can also stop right there. It's not going to happen because it's hard enough getting 7 people organized. Well, that's namely hard because all you need is 8 people for a raid, and there's like 90,000 raid groups out there. I'm over on Excalibur, I'm sure it's the same server, but the bulk of those raid groups all raid the same days and times. All 24-man endgame would really do is consolidate those raiders into one group instead of 3. So, I'll stop you right there. There's a lot of reasons for this. One of the biggest ones is organizing schedules. I don't know if you've ever led a 24-man raid group. When you have those 72-man raid groups, what normally happens is you have a pool of about 100 to 120 people that you can pull from. And whoever's online first and invited are the people who get to come. Final Fantasy XI was very much the same way. You create a Dynamis link shell, which could fit up to 72 people in one instance, but you would invite more than 72 people. You also didn't need 72 people. You could go in with 30 or 40, so you could actually, you know, make 72 the max amount of people and go in with less. With 24-man, all 24 of you need to, A, get along and be able to communicate. We all know how much people in MMOs love their teenage bullshit drama. It's happened. I've played MMOs for 15 years now. I've seen so much bullshit drama. They took my gloves. I mean, yeah, it sucks. You just don't play with those fuckers again. But people like go on tirades. They go on forums, you know, and it's not even like they took your gloves like they ninja'd them. They just won a lot on them, and you think they're a shittier player than you, and you start that teenage drama bullshit. The whole raid group has to break up. It's awful. So people start teenage drama bullshit. Getting all 24 people at one time sucks. And on top of that, getting people that are all equally minded. That's the hardest thing. Getting 24 people that are all 100% like-minded and are 100% committed in the exact same way that you are is incredibly tough. That's why even in the MMOs like World of Warcraft that house these large raid groups, a lot of the times you have people moving in and out constantly because of all these little problems. And I can tell you right now, the raid leaders fucking hate it. They want to beat the fight. They want people to stop their childish bullshit and just beat the fucking fight. Stop complaining about shit in between pulls. Fix your shit and get the fuck in there. All right? People care a lot about loot. There's so many problems just because human beings suck. That's ultimately the problem that we have right here, especially in our modern day and age where people have been brought up in this generation where there's a lot of instant gratification. We like to say this about people a lot, but it is a truth. We have easier access to things in life now. Things like 72-man raids. If someone doesn't want to do that, they'll just go on their phone and fucking go get a fucking Uber. They'll have a random person in a car and an app, pick them up, take them someplace. They'll stay there for 5 minutes and they'll come back. They can do whatever they want. They have instant access to everything they could possibly want. There's no sense to feel any sort of camaraderie anymore. There's no sense in burning all your time and shit. So it's just not something that's culturally acceptable nowadays unless you're something that is still thriving off of it from years ago. Hence why World of Warcraft is pretty much the only game that gets away with that shit nowadays. Alright, on that note, let's calm down a little bit and move to the next one. What is good, Haps? Well, considering you said it in all caps, you either were saying it with much enthusiasm or it's an acronym of some kind. So, I got nothing. Or maybe it's just Doog backwards. Anyway, with Stormblood so close, I can taste it. And partially inspired by a question you actually received a couple weeks ago, I thought we'd get your thoughts on 14 in retrospect and take a look at what's to come. For this week, let's rewind back a bit. What would you say has been your favorite moment in the story so far? What would you say has moved you the most or got you the most invested in the plot? What served up Mr. Happy his daily dose of honey nut Felios. So when we didn't know everyone was going to live in 2.55, it was 2.55. I feel like the second patch of 2.5 was definitely the highest point in the story. Other than that, I'd have to say the final confrontation with Nidhogg in 3.3 was an incredible experience. And then if I had to put something in third place, it would be an age-old clash that just happened in the most recent story patch that I've been waiting to see since, well, started playing Final Fantasy pretty much. So I'd have to give those three situations pretty much. All right, and we're more than halfway through at this point. Hey, Haps, no bonus. I give you food, but you complained about all the food a show or two ago. So yeah, you know what? You listened. You get brownie points for that. Not food, like not actual never mind. You're going to record this before the big live letter tomorrow. That you are right. And so neither you nor I will know what healing changes are going to be. Anyway, my question's not really about that. Thank God. Note, I ended up ranting for a while. Feel free to save time and read the non-question stuff off cam. I think we should go down to the TLDR that you've included here at the bottom. So my question is simply, what should I do? Okay, I guess I kind of got to read. This stuff. Let's see. Bit of I wanted to raid, but at the same time, feel like things aren't working. Things are working. I'm a healer at heart. There's no new healing job. Let's see. I know all of level 70, but yeah, that's a small part of the content. We'll play a new raid. I don't really have anyone to raid with, and then there's too much drama. See, just from the last question. I brought it up with the FC and LS, and there was some hms and ha's, but nothing. I'm on a JP server. I speak Japanese, but many JP people don't want to play with me because I mostly speak English. I have an English client, and so it basically says kick me. Need some advice. Need someone to slap me in the face, throw a bucket of ice. Go to a fucking non-Japanese server. Are you in like one of the C regions or something, and you're just playing there? Like, are you in like Australia or some area that is not? Get off the Japanese servers so you have a bigger pool of people to raid with. You can't go to Gilgamesh or Balmung anymore, sad face, but you can go to a different server at the very least. I mean, yeah, it sucks to have to ditch your free company, but I mean, maybe you can just move your character over to another server to raid, and then keep a character on that server where you're with your free company, and you can hang out and talk to them still. That could be a possibility. But I mean, all I'm going to tell you is stuff you can try to do. I have no idea if it'll be successful, but I mean, that's all you have. That's pretty much. You could also go to Tonberry if you want to change servers, but stay on JP servers because there's at least a larger English-speaking community there. But without knowing your server location, it's kind of hard to demand that you go to a different JP server that has a larger English-speaking community. And on top of that, then you can, yeah, hopefully we get the crossover friends lists and link shells and all that stuff soonish, so you can, which we won't, by the way, so you can make your decision a little bit easier to see if the move is required. All right then, hey Hep, no bonus, but you can have this bottle of Vegemite. No. If you were to somehow make a static with 7 copies of yourself, world first, what would your static's composition be? And would you be able to clear all the raids at minimum item level sync? I can tell you right now, yeah, we could kill all the raids at minimum item level sync. Gordius would be the biggest struggle because those copies of me have never tanked or healed, but I'm confident that they could pick it up. So let's see. What would my static's composition be? Warrior, 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 warrior. No. So it would be Warrior, Dark Knight, Astro Scholar. Although going back to Binding Second Final, I don't know. I need different compositions for each and every one of these. But if I could just pick one like modern Heavensward composition, I would actually forego the Bard and try to go with something like a Summoner, just because I don't want to play Bard. None of those copies want to play Bard. I can promise you that at the very least. So. Warrior, Paladin, Astro, Scholar, Machinist, Summoner, Ninja, and Monk. Fuck it. I don't want to play Dragoon either. I want to finally, one of those fucking copies is finally getting to play Monk. I can promise you that. Alright, now that I got my Monk point across, hello Mr. Happy. I hope you are looking forward to playing Stormblood. Have some squadron rationing manuals. What are those? I don't even know what the squadron, just... Bring me scripts. Here are my questions this week. 1, I'm trying to level my desynthesis. I'm at the point where I'm around 70% success in desynthesis on I-185 items. What is the optimal percentage of desynthesis? So if you can get 50% and then get a bacon broth and a Tinker's Calm, that is pretty optimal. It's not bad to have like 70%, and then you can use it and you have like an 85% chance, I think, with the HQ bacon broth and the HQ Tinker's Calm. HQ Tinker's Calm is 10%, and HQ Bacon Broth, I think, is 5%. So, yeah, That works fine. It's more a matter of how many items you can desynth. The more items you have to desynth, then the lower the percentage can actually kind of be, because you'll get the bigger gains, but you're buying so many of them. But if you have very few items, you want the highest success chance possible, because you don't want to botch those fucking things. And you do have a second question here. I'm preparing to make some money in Stormblood, for instance, storing materia. Or my question is, what kind of item should I sell now instead of keeping? So materia is an item you could probably keep, I'd imagine. As for anything else, I mean, sell things that aren't related to housing or are for, like, crafting raid gear for now. Like, people are probably going to craft gear and try to sell it to the red mages and samurais that are leveling up later. But for now, at the very least, I don't think, unless you're making level 50 or 60 sets, and even then, maybe not, you probably won't get much for those. But if you, anything that makes an item that can be used in a house, keep it for now, because when Shirogane opens up, tons of people are going to be buying housing shit, and that's when you'll make your bank. Alright, there we go. So next question. Hey Haps, your bonus for today is a fully developed relic weapon in Stormblood, but I want to do Eureka. Like, I want to actually see how Eureka pans out. So if I have the relic, then I might not be interested in doing it. So I will accept the offer, and then I will throw it away and do it from scratch anyway. My question is, I noticed while watching the Revolutions video that there will be interacting with the Aura tribes. Do you think there will be a reference for players who play the Aura race, like how for when there was a reference for players who completed the Dragoon quest? I don't know that the player ever picks a tribe. So other than acknowledging you're an Aura, like a slight, like, oh, an Aura, yay. Like, I don't see the interaction being more complex than that, if that makes sense. I think we have like 4 questions left on the forums, and then I'll get some of the questions from the Twitch chat. Hey Haps, been a while since I asked you something. 2 years actually. Wow, have 2 years of rested XP. I will take that. That is a grandiose reward. Thank you. Now for the question. I left the game at the end of 2015 after hardcore raiding since July of the same year as Monk. Yes! Coming to a close on server first kills in Alexander, and I enjoyed every second of it. But static went to hell. I didn't feel like searching for a new and solid one, so I left the game. After seeing the various Stormblood trailers and seeing Samurai, I just want to get back in the game. I know I lost a lot of content, but I want to power level to 70 and look for static as soon as I can when the expansion comes out. I was thinking about doing it after coming back. Grinding Palace of the Dead to 99.99 now with another class. Good idea. Then use that equip on Samurai the day the expansion launches, grind to 60, and then trade the 99 gear for 255. Keep in mind, you don't get 255 gear. You get a 235 weapon that can then be upgraded to a 255 weapon for the cost of a total of 90 Ether Pool Arm and Armors. You're not going to get a full set. You get one weapon from all that. But I don't think it's a bad idea. I think the 99 and then using the weapon for Samurai makes sense. But, I mean, keep in mind, you won't have a full set of gear. I was also thinking about leaving the main quest of 3.x I didn't do to my Samurai. I think that's an okay idea because those quests will probably give you gear post expansion launch. So you'll probably be able to get a full set of like 230 or 240 gear or something like that from the Heavensward main sword quest. So not a bad idea again, because that'll get you the armor that you otherwise were not getting from Palace of the Dead. Is there something else you would heavily recommend doing besides that to prepare? No, I think you've pretty much got the basis down. Maybe get a crafter or a gatherer or something so you can make some money, like we were just talking about in the previous one. But other than that, no, I think your plan is pretty solid, and I think that you'll find that it works out pretty well in your favor. Okay, this person, they watched my stream for like 7 hours waiting for me to start doing Mondays, and then right after they left, I was done watching Mid-Season Invitational for League of Legends, and I started. So now they'll get to see the question today. Hello, Mr. Happy. This is Final Sim, and welcome to my question on your channel. My question today is a non-14 related one. I have a 6-month-old baby, and I love him. What toys do you believe are suitable for a boy his age? I don't have a kid. You know what I played with when I was 6 years old? I don't know. Because I don't have any pictures. My family has pictures. I don't carry those pictures. I'd imagine it was a rattle. I remember I used to climb the stairs at 6 months. My family said they hated it because they were afraid I was going to fall down the stairs and die. So you probably shouldn't listen to any advice I have right here. Oh, another question. How do I manage playing 14? I feel like the first question was just bait. How do I manage playing 14 while having quality time with my wife? Given that I work shifts, and it's 52 hours per week. Scheduling. There you go. That's advice I can give. Scheduling. Schedule it. Schedule the time. Put a calendar. Get it and put it on the fridge, and you'll be good. Okay, on that note, hey, Mr. Happy, I noticed there was a ping question early on, so you may or may not have answered this. What do you think about how the game handles the global cooldown, off global cooldown skills, particularly in regards to animation lock and double weaving? How important the chair, and also how important is the chair for long play sessions with Stormblood coming? I'm fine in my current chair, but I mean, technically the chair shouldn't be a problem for long play sessions if you get up and walk around occasionally, because then you get up and walk around and you don't have to worry about sitting in the chair for 7 hours. You know what I mean? That being said, in terms of how the global cooldown, off global cooldown handles animation locks, I mean, my question, my answer earlier kind of already covers that, I suppose. I think it's fine. I think it's just that it heavily varies per player. I remember having tons of issues in World of Warcraft when I played, whenever there was any sort of latency or connection issues, you know, abilities refunding. Very similar issues with dodging AoEs. I know a lot of people would see themselves out of the Hagen dance. Or, you know, when you're doing Frogger and Naxxramas, you're like, I'm perfectly in between these two. But the latency would always fuck you on Frogger if you weren't, like, using a VPN or something like that. So I've seen people suffer from a lot of the same issues in World of Warcraft as in Final Fantasy XIV, but it's definitely more pronounced in Final Fantasy XIV. Unfortunately, as long as they work the way they do, unless you can shoot them off with no delay at all, and then all the animations clip each other even more than they do now, then it's just going to keep being that way, pretty much. I think this is the last question, and it's 3 questions. So Twitch chat, be ready to post your questions as soon as I ask for them, because it's coming up. Hey, Happy, I hear you're a busy man, so I have a first-time bonus of an extra free month for you to squeeze in whenever you need to do something healthy. Okay, how about this instead? I'm going to take that free month, right? So Zodiac Age comes out in the middle of July, right around the time Savage comes out, right? So here's what you do. Zodiac Age comes out, okay? And let's just assume the Savage raids are like a few days later. Let's just, from July 13th till, like, we just throw 30 days in right there. And then keep in mind that with those 30 days, the raid still isn't coming out until after those 30 days, plus the few more days. So we could do that. That's not healthy, but it's better. You know, I think that'll work. So 3 questions, 2 long, 1 a little bit shorter. Hopefully you don't mind. 14 heavily encourages leveling all jobs on 1 character simply because ults are a pain to manage. If you have to jump through to do something as simple as transfer a tradable item are off-putting. And I feel like gearing more than 2 or 3 jobs while content is relevant is impossible. Well, that depends. If you are a hardcore raider, you pick up gear for a lot of your alternate jobs pretty quick, between getting the gear from the actual raid, getting your tomestones, and then getting the books and whatnot to actually pick up gear of your choice. And then in the odd-numbered patches, you tend to get a lot of that gear that fits in between. Do you think Square Enix could implement multi-jobbing by implementing job role-specific lockouts? I don't think it's a bad idea to do role-specific lockouts. I think job-specific's a little too much, but I think role-specific lockouts makes a little bit more sense. It's just a matter of so the problem with role-specific lockouts is that something that would still have to come in later. Like, if you do that right as an expansion launches, or right as like a hardcore raid tier launches, people end up doing the first fight 3 times in the first couple of weeks, you know, and then people start demanding that it be mandatory for progression, so that way you can do things such as loot stacking in order to, like, if you had 3 chances. Oh, I guess then again, if you're picking up each piece of loot per roll, like if you're on a tank, you can only roll on tank stuff, you can't even greed other stuff, that might work out a little bit better. I think that's still something that would be in odd-numbered patches, though. I don't think they would do it for even-numbered patches, so I'm not against it, but it definitely has to have some sort of regulations in a sense. Let's see. Next question. I regularly watch State of the Realm. You guys often talk about the different Garlean regions, how they represent the different Final Fantasy games. 14 is my first game, so I feel a little left out when it comes to speculations about things like Exdeath and Enuo and Omega and Shinryu. Could you clarify this connection between 14 and the other games? So it's been implied multiple times that 14 sort of sits in the... not necessarily using the Void, but it almost connects all the Final Fantasy games. I'm sorry, I almost said Vanadil. I've been playing 11 this past week because of the 15-year anniversary and my 3-year anniversary. Eorzea is not actually connected to anything. I mean, we see characters that exist in other games, but it's not the same instance of that character. 14 pretty much acts as the ultimate Final Fantasy theme park. Ideas and concepts and characters that are introduced across all the various games regularly make appearances here. They are not in their original form. They are something that is uniquely imagined for Final Fantasy XIV, but the references called there are undeniable. So when we make these sort of connections with each other, they're not literal connections. When we say that Nailed Van Darnus was actually Sephiroth, we don't mean that he's actually Sephiroth. We mean he's playing the part in Final Fantasy XIV that Sephiroth played in Final Fantasy VII, and he happens to be the leader of the 7th Legion. The same with Regula Van Hydrus playing a role somewhat similar to General Leo did in Final Fantasy VI, whereas a lot of us suspected maybe he'd be like Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. They draw similarities in that sense, but they aren't literally taken from said game and brought over into Eorzea, if that makes sense. And the final one you have right here, it was announced recently that sprinting in Stormblood would no longer consume TP. Do you think this could open up the possibility of casters drawing from this resource as well as certain actions in the future? No, I have a feeling you're just never going to use TP. I'm always disappointed in the way that Sprint used TP, and that's the only use you have for it. And now it's kind of like you have this extra resource as a caster that you'll never use for anything. So it's really, really awkward. I don't think they'll draw from TP for pretty much anything. And honestly, I think for casters, they would be okay with removing TP visually now that absolutely nothing is used for it. That was the last question from the forums. So now I'm going to take some questions from the Twitch chat. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the floor. All right, so the first post I'm going to take actually has 2 questions in it. It's very smart. I've never seen someone do that in the Twitch chat one. Question 1, if elemental resistances are removed entirely, what other purpose should the 12 serve when picking one for your character? Honestly, those should have never had the elemental resistance choice in the first place because it's meaningless as it is. Honestly, just RP. If you care about role-playing as your character and the history of your character, that's all that choice should have ever meant, not 2 elemental resistance that you'll never notice. And question number 2, what changes would you like to see made to the Deep Dungeon system? I'd like to see Deep Dungeon more focused. I'd like to see a Deep Dungeon more focused on endgame content. We have Palace of the Dead. Palace of the Dead is a leveling service pretty much at this point. And then yes, if you care for the challenge of it, you'll go to like past floor 150 eventually. I'd like to see Deep Dungeon be a max level, or another Deep Dungeon, I gotta keep saying, be a max level piece of content that actually in some way supports different playstyles. You know, maybe you have a floor where, you know, if you're able to successfully stealth through the entire floor without being seen by any enemies, then you'll actually, and like the exit's automatically open, so you don't need to kill any enemies. If you're able to successfully stealth through without fighting any enemies, then you actually get an accursed horde, for example, or maybe get bonus experience at the end of it. Obviously, I just said don't use it as a leveling thing, but I'm just listing rewards and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? I like to see the objectives mixed up instead of just kill enemy, go to exit, kill enemy, go to exit, kill enemy, go to exit. I just want to see those playstyles shaken up in Deep Dungeon. All right, this next one's going to be more focused on sort of my own personal interests. Mr. Happy, I know you're a big fan of League of Legends esports, but what are your thoughts on Heroes of the Storm and Dota 2? So I'll do Dota 2 first. I love watching the International every year. Dota 2 to play, I've tried to pick it up, and it's never really that fun of an experience for me. I feel like Dota 2 sort of, not archaic in a sense, but I don't feel like it's welcoming, and that involves both the community side of Dota 2 and their expectations of the players. More so, and you'd think with League, like how bad League gets, but League you can just overcome it. Dota 2 really wants you to know your shit, and I don't feel like the learning experience in Dota 2 is very welcoming. As for the competitive scene, though, they already know everything. It's fucking amazing watching them. The International is one of my favorite events every year, alongside the League of Legends World Championships, and I love seeing the competition there, and I plan on watching it again this next coming year. As for Heroes of the Storm, I can't take it seriously, man. It's just not, it doesn't feel like I'm watching something competitive. It feels like there's 2 teams fighting to win, but it doesn't, when I'm watching it, it just doesn't feel competitive. It feels fun and silly and a little interesting, but I never really look at it and go, yeah, competition. I look at it and go, that's Heroes of the Storm. I'm going to go watch something else instead. All right, the next one I have makes sense considering what I got to do this weekend. So how do you feel about Elder Scrolls Online, and do you think you'll ever be able to seriously play the expansion? So the expansion comes out at a horrible time for me. The expansion comes out literally 2 weeks before Stormblood does. 10 days, I think, before Stormblood's early access is, which is just an awful, awful time frame for me. Elder Scrolls is like one of those MMOs I've always wanted to like, and every time I see it, I'm usually impressed by the Elder Scrolls elements and how they've been improved over the years. But I get into it, and it always feels like there's no desire to progress. And having just played the Morrowind private test server, you know, I had a lot of fun seeing all the different progression systems that Elder Scrolls has built into the game and trying to figure out what was optimal and what wasn't. But going out into the world, you know, it doesn't feel Elder Scrolls enough for me. And that's the thing I want it to be. I want it to be an Elder Scrolls game first and an MMO second. And as much as they've tried to work towards that with things like One Tamriel, I don't feel that when I'm in there. Like, it doesn't feel like it's Elder Scrolls first. It feels like it's MMO first. And that's kind of like, it's weird because with Final Fantasy XIV, it's hard to tell because it's trying to be, it's hard to tell where it's trying to be a Final Fantasy first and an MMO first. Because Final Fantasy XI is very Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy XIV is very Final Fantasy. Like, everything that's Final Fantasy is shoved in your face all the time. And at the same time, the MMO aspects are really shoved in your face all the time. And now with, I mean, I'm talking about old school Final Fantasy XI, which was, and again, the MMO aspects were shoved in your face all the time. Nowadays, really gives a shit. Which it's weird because I don't think that way when I'm playing Final Fantasy because it's just a franchise I'm more connected to. Elder Scrolls, I love Morrowind. It's the first game I played on the Xbox. Oblivion, poured like 80 to 100 hours into that, and I didn't even own a console that could play it at the time. I had to go to friends' houses. And Skyrim, I fucking pumped 100 hours into practically in the first 8 days of it being out. I love those games, but I'm not connected to them in the same way. So when Elder Scrolls Online doesn't meet my expectations, I'm quicker to leave it alone. The PTS was fine. The Battlegrounds were fun for PvP, but I couldn't get to test any of the dungeons because on the private test server, there's not that many people playing, and no one was queuing up for the dungeons, so that was a little bit tough. I'd like to try and visit the early access that's going to be available soon for Morrowind. That way, I can get a better feel for how it'll play when there's more people online. But something just always feels missing about Elder Scrolls Online, and I can never pinpoint what it is. All right, the next one we have is, it's kind of a for fun one. We have got quite a few for fun ones here. I have a question that says, Mr. Happy, if you could add any one boss from Final Fantasy and its associated games as a super boss, who would you add? Anima. Anima for me is always the big one. And when I say super boss, I mean super boss, because I wouldn't want the story version of Anima you fight in 10. That's the only version of Anima you fight in 10 other than Dark Anima in the international version, and then the Anima that gets summoned from that Meme Temple. Like, you don't really fight any other real, and the final fight doesn't fucking count. Come on, you know the final fight doesn't count. So I would like Anima. I love Anima's character, and I think it's a character that has room to exist with a similar backstory in Final Fantasy XIV. So that's a big one-up on my list. All right, so the last question I actually have here is something I'm planning on making a video for after my stream is done today. I have a few videos to make regarding a few different things. But it's about the changes to the server lock. So for those who didn't know, they're locking servers from character creation and transfer. On Gaia, it's the Bahamut server. On Mana, it's Chocobo, Mandragora, and Shinryu. On Ether, Balmung, and Gilgamesh. So you can't make new characters on these servers anymore, and you can't transfer to these servers anymore. To help encourage people to transfer off of those servers, or for people that are interested in transferring off, they're raising the amount of gil that you can take with you to 10 million on the player and 5 million per retainer. They're also adding new EU worlds, which will be available at 4.0's launch, and they'll have EXP bonuses. You can transfer to them free of charge. You'll even get free playtime for newly created characters on those worlds. And it's in other words, you get a shit ton of bonuses if you play on the new EU servers. So the question is, basically, how do I feel about them? I feel it's long overdue. I feel like they shouldn't have done this at 4.0's launch. This should have been their plan months and months and months ago. I think it's the right idea, though, to provide these sort of large-scale buffs and encouragements for people to not just go to the highest pop servers. Keep in mind that up until this point, you could completely bypass character creation by transferring to Gilgamesh and Balmung, and it just got way out of hand. It alienated a lot of servers, and you know, it's led to me believing that they should absolutely merge certain servers, even though it's a bad look in terms of PR. This should help, but it's long overdue. Like, it should have been here a long time ago. So hopefully it has a positive effect after it comes out. But even still, I mean, I guess better late than never, right? But should have done it a long time ago. So at least not everyone's going to Greg. I wonder how long it takes before Gilgamesh and Balmung are open again, because that'll be a large indication of how successful this new campaign actually was. But anyway, that's going to be the last question I take from the Twitch chat. I'm going to hang out with them for a few more minutes after I'm done with this live recording. But I do have some stuff that I need to get done for videos today and tomorrow. Plus, we have the live letter. Those of you seeing it on YouTube on Monday, the live letter, 9 a.m. on Monday, Pacific Standard Time, noon Eastern. So it's right in the morning. I'll have as much content out about that as I possibly can. The usual overview. And if it's going to have, if the test stream having the Black Mage abilities is any indication of what we'll see tomorrow in terms of the amount of information that will be available for me to make videos on, we are probably in for like a shit ton of videos this week, because there's like 2 or 3 videos we haven't seen yet from Square Enix. We haven't seen a zone trailer, we haven't seen a job action trailer, and if he already showed some Black Mage skills today, he'll probably show more skills from different jobs tomorrow. So there's potential for literally like a fucking metric ton of videos depending on how the live letter goes tomorrow. So fingers fucking crossed that we have insane amounts of data coming in to talk about over the next week. And I just hope to bring as much to you as humanly possible. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap from Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to ask your questions for next week. And remember not to ask about the fucking media tour until you see me post the video. So you don't know when it'll be, but don't fucking ask. All right. On that note, though, thank you for watching this Mondays with Mr. Happy. I'll see you for next week's episode, and until then, take care.